Hey guys, welcome back. It's week 3 in FanDuel NFL fantasy football. It's been a fun 2 weeks. We saw a lot of big scores last week, and of course, with week 1 being the same as well. And FanDuel actually has that $5 million contest for you again this week. So let's be sure to get into the breakdowns right away. First, we'll be discussing quarterbacks. Of course, you can follow the rest of the videos and articles over on RotoCurve for running backs, receivers, tight ends. And we're doing some stuff on kickers and defenses as well. So be sure to check that out. But first things first, let's break down the quarterbacks. We'll look at 3 different tiers and a few quarterbacks in each tier that I like to do for the given week. And for week 3, it starts for me no other than Aaron Rodgers, the #1 overall price quarterback. He's not the top price player. Antonio Brown takes that crown this week. But on FanDuel, Aaron Rodgers is the #1 price quarterback. And I do like him this week against the Chiefs. Now, first things first, Rodgers is one of the more consistent quarterbacks we've seen in the NFL. He throws for 2-3 touchdowns almost just every week. And you see guys like him just kind of work the ball to an efficient point where he doesn't have to throw 50 points to be a top-tier fantasy option. And that's what we've seen from him, throwing 30 to 40 passes, getting well over 300 yards. And we've seen some games with 25 or less attempts, and he's still able to throw for 2 or 3 touchdowns as well. But one reason why I like him this week against this Chiefs defense is because the Chiefs have allowed 590 yards and 5 touchdowns so far this season in just 2 games. They have some cornerbacks by the name of Phillip Gaines, Marcus Peters. Marcus Peters is a very nice rookie. But the other guy is Marcus Cooper, who has really struggled a lot. At the end of last season, the beginning of this season, he's been one of the top fantasy cornerbacks to target. So be sure to keep an eye on Rodgers exploiting that matchup with probably James Jones on that side. Now, if Eddie Lacy is out, which we saw him leave week 2 with an injury, I'm not sure if he's going to miss this game. But if he does, expect Rodgers to throw that much more. Now, the next guy in that top tier is Ben Roethlisberger for me. Now, of course, everybody's been talking about the Steelers' offense. Roethlisberger has thrown for over 700 yards already, and he hasn't had Martavis Bryant or Le'Veon Bell. But he's getting Le'Veon Bell back this week. Now, first things first, everybody would always say, okay, maybe Big Ben's not going to see his statistics may go down. But Le'Veon Bell actually kind of puts that to rest. If you look at Big Ben's career, he's averaging around 18.5 fantasy points per game when Le'Veon Bell is not playing. But when he is playing, that number's over 22. Since Le'Veon Bell's coming to the NFL, Roethlisberger has averaged almost 5 more fantasy points per game. So despite the fact that a top-tier running back is coming back, that's actually helping Big Ben Roethlisberger's fantasy value. Now, this week in week 3, he faces the Steelers looking at the Rams this week. Of course, the Rams have one of the top defensive lines in football with Robert Quinn and Aaron Donald, but they've struggled in the secondary. Guys like Janoris Jenkins have been one of the more aggressive cornerbacks in the NFL, and when you're aggressive, those double moves can really bite you. And wouldn't you know it, Antonio Brown's going to be the guy that's being covered by Jenkins, so expect a deep touchdown from either side if Jenkins is able to bite on those short curl routes, which Antonio Brown loves to run. So if you don't want to spend as much for Aaron Rodgers at $9,100 on FanDuel, I do like Big Ben at $600 less, and I think you're going to see the same production. Now moving on to the second tier, my favorite guy in the second tier so far this season and probably for the rest of the season if he stays healthy, and that's Carson Palmer for the Arizona Cardinals. He has a remarkable consistency streak going right now with at least 2 touchdown passes in 7 straight regular season games. Now, that's rare to find now because you always see a team that has maybe 1 bad game or a quarterback throws an interception or 2 rather than touchdowns. But 7 straight games with at least 2 touchdowns is very consistent, and it basically brings him to the threshold of well over 15 FanDuel points, which is exactly what you need for a quarterback in the second tier. This is an excellent streak for Palmer because he has been a guy that's been having some injury issues. But considering the fact that he had some lack of talent in the wide receiver position with Larry Fitzgerald being hurt, Michael Floyd being hurt in the last 2 years, it shows that he is able to throw touchdowns no matter who's out there. Now, with all these guys healthy and a good matchup against San Francisco this week, I think he makes for an excellent play. Talking about that matchup against the Niners, last week the Steelers passing offense, who we just mentioned, threw for 369 yards and 3 touchdowns on this Niners defense. Now, the Niners do not have Chris Culliver like they did last year, who's one of the better corners in the NFL. So they're starting some cornerbacks that aren't necessarily up to par, and I expect Carson Palmer and Bruce Arians' aerial attack to attack that and be sure to get Palmer those 2 touchdowns to continue the streak. Some other options I wanted to consider in the second tier were guys like Phillip Rivers, and if you wanted to spend on Sam Bradford again, is a very low-owned option for the Jets. Maybe this is the week the Eagles can turn it on, but I don't have that much faith as opposed to paying up for a guy like Carson Palmer. Tier 3, I only have one guy that I'm looking at for this week, with the exception, of course, a lot of guys like Nick Foles and Jameis Winston. I'm on the same boat, but those two seem like guys that everybody's is on. So I want to talk about one guy that maybe not a lot of people are going to be on simply because of the rest of those other quarterbacks, but I do think he should be highly owned. But whether he is, we'll see when Thursday games come around. And that's Ryan Fitzpatrick, the New York Jets. Of course, Fitzpatrick's not a guy that's going to throw for 400 yards, although he did one time, or 4 or 5 touchdowns every week. But he's a guy that can get the job done. He can win football games. And honestly, he can put up some decent stats with a nice receiving core against a bad defense. And that's exactly what he's going to be facing in week 3 against the Eagles. Now, I hate to rub that word bad defense one way because the Eagles have a very good front 7 when healthy. They have 2 good safeties in Malcolm Jenkins and Walter Thurman, who've been playing very well. But that guy they just signed from the Seahawks, Byron Maxwell, has been wretched this season. I believe he's allowed a passer rating of 158.3. For those of you that know how that rating works, that's a perfect passer rating in coverage, and that's not what you want to see. Now, he's going to be lining up against Brandon Marshall this week. As we know, Marshall is one of the biggest mismatches in the NFL. So considering Ryan Fitzpatrick gets to see one of his top receivers and his top option now with Eric Decker being hurt against one of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL so far this season in terms of coverage, it makes for a very good play at just 6,800 on FanDuel. You know, with that Eagles game, that over-under is going to be high. Now, of course, they haven't been able to score much, but if that over-under stays high, then you're getting a cheap quarterback and a high over-under game, and I'm expecting the Jets to win. So they're going to keep up with the Eagles' offense if they can get on track. This game could flow in the right way for Fitzpatrick, and it could lead to a big FanDuel point system for him for week 3. Now, the last guy that I wanted to talk about, we just discussed with Winston and Nick Foles. I want to take a look real quick at Johnny Manziel, because if he does start, he's a very electrifying option. Now, I don't think he's going to necessarily start if Josh McCown is healthy, but be sure to keep an eye on Johnny Manziel as well, because he has the ability to run. He looks like he's throwing a lot better from the pocket this week as well. So just rounding up our quarterback picks for week 3, I like Carson Palmer in the middle tier, Ryan Fitzpatrick in the low tier, and, of course, my top tier options are Aaron Rodgers and Ben Roethlisberger. That rounds up the rest of our quarterback segment, and be sure to tune in for the rest of the segments on running backs, receivers, tight ends, and use everything to your knowledge over at RotoCurve. There's a ton of NFL tools. We're updating them daily, and let's make week 3 a profitable one in NFL. Good luck, everybody.